He descended into hell. The third day he rose again from the dead. He ascended into heaven and sitteth on the right hand of God the Father Almighty. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Ghost.
Amen.
So I have here a copy of my favorite icon, one of my favorite icons, that hangs across from my desk in my study. And it's a very popular icon of the resurrection. I'll walk around so you can see it better. So the first thing you see is the risen Lord. He's the one with rays of light coming out from him. And he's standing on the cross, which is over a pit, darkness. That represents death, or hell, that we just talked about, that we just mentioned in the Creed. And you might notice that he is pulling up with him two people, which represents Adam and Eve. And they, of course, are coming out of their graves. And then here we have, let's see, on this side are Jesus' relatives, St. John the Baptist, King Solomon, and King David, both very human kings. And on this side we have Moses with his staff and the prophets. It's an interesting icon. Interesting because the icon does not separate the resurrection that first Easter morning with what Jesus was busy doing on Holy Saturday when he descended into hell and harrowed hell. Now, I would wager that many of us do not think about that section of the Creed, he descended into hell, very often, because it's almost overshadowed by the third day he rose again from the dead, which we celebrate on Easter Day and every Sunday. And he ascended into heaven, which we celebrate on Ascension Day, and sitteth at the right hand of God the Father Almighty, which we celebrate on Christ the King Sunday. And perhaps this part of the Creed is easy to overlook because we are not sure what we mean when we say, he descended into hell. Now, I confess that before I became an Anglican, I was completely unaware that Christians have believed from the very beginning that Jesus descended into hell. Besides, the rest of the Creed, Jesus rising from the dead, ascending into heaven, and throned at the right hand of God the Father is so much more pleasant to think about. But the Creed and this icon of the resurrection are reminders that Jesus descending into hell is just as important. Jesus died on the cross and rose from the dead to set all things right. And according to the Scriptures and the teaching of the Church, before the resurrection and ascension of Jesus, no one went to heaven. When Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and the great heroes of the Old Testament died, they went to a holding place, to the bosom of Abraham, what we might think of as a kind of limbo. Even when St. Joseph, the foster father of Jesus, died, which according to tradition it is thought that he died before Jesus began his earthly ministry, he also went to this place, which the Creed calls hell. This little section of the Creed reminds us that the fall, which began in the Garden of Eden with Adam and Eve, had turned God's creation, God's icon, of what the world is supposed to look like, upside down. So Jesus must descend into hell to begin to set the picture right. So what is Jesus doing on Holy Saturday? He is not just dead or relaxing on the clouds in heaven. He, as the Church says, harrows hell. St. Peter tells us that he goes and preaches to and delivers souls from hell. According to the Western Church, this means he delivered those righteous Jews from the place of the dead, the limbo of the fathers. And according to the Eastern Church, it means that he offered salvation to all who died before. But both East and West agree that he did not suffer the pains of hell. Now, speculation over what happened that Holy Saturday evening abounds. One famous Anglo-Catholic priest is noted for having said, "What was Jesus doing on Holy Saturday? He was looking for his friend Judas." But I think it's better to speculate over what a reunion it must have been when Jesus saw St. Joseph again, or his earthly grandparents, St. Anna and St. Joachim. But we can be certain that because he descended into hell teaches us that Jesus never forgets. It teaches us that in order to see the picture as God intended, no part of the creed may be left out. No part may be divorced from the rest. Jesus' descent into hell, his resurrection from the dead, his ascension into heaven, and sitting down at the right hand of God the Father Almighty is the picture beginning to be set right. Now we have heard the saying, what goes up must come down. But with Jesus, it is what came down must come up. Jesus is incarnated into the world. He comes down into our world taking human flesh and bone. He goes down even further into death and hell and comes back up again victorious over death and hell. And now human flesh and blood, resurrected and glorified flesh and blood, sits down at the right hand of God the Father Almighty in heaven. But his work is not finished. He who knows all about human life, who knows what it means to suffer and die, who even knows what it means to go into hell, prays for each one of us, that we will have the strength and courage to follow him into heaven, and one day to ascend with him into heaven forever. Now, the next time you recite the Apostles' Creed, or maybe see the icon of the resurrection, remember Jesus pulling up Adam and Eve. And I hope you will remember and recognize that it is not just Adam and Eve that Jesus is pulling up with him into the resurrected life, but you. Remember that we have it better than Adam and Eve did. Jesus says in the Gospel of Luke, "For I tell you that many prophets and kings have desired to see what you see and have not seen it, and to hear what you hear and have not heard it." How thankful, how grateful we should be that Jesus is pulling us up into the resurrected life with every Mass, with every confession, with every word from his gospel. Amen. Amen.